Well, thank you so much, Bill, for one, taking the time to do this free webinar and really allowing it to be shared to whoever wants to see it. I really appreciate your generosity. And I'm also very grateful that you're one of the main speakers in the program, the 6-month program in Santa Monica. And I know you're busy. I know you're working on a book, and I really, again, I'm grateful for the time that you're putting into this program. And I know that so many people are going to benefit from that. So thanks.
Good. You're very welcome. Yeah. All part of the journey.
Yeah. And in terms of my introduction to your work, I'm also a mental health professional. And so I have been so greatly impacted by all that you have shared in terms of your work as a psychiatrist. You've been a psychiatrist for over 35 years, and you've been sharing this understanding in your psychiatric practice and seeing incredible healing results with people connecting with their innate mental health, independent of whatever the professional community label that they have, that there's that innate well-being and health inside of all of us. And for me, especially not having this understanding when I initially started my practice, I'd always looked through the lens of people being able to connect with their spiritual nature. That was always something that felt accurate to me. But I still, when I was working with clients, I still worked with people going into their emotional process, going into reframing their thinking, looking at limiting beliefs, thinking that that would be the way to get them closer to their spiritual nature. Right. And I didn't realize at the time, obviously innocently, I didn't realize at the time how that would get confusing for people. Right. And how that would be taking them in the direction that was more deeply ensconced in their ego, deeply ensconced in their stories, and really not leading them directly to who they really are. And so it was a huge wake-up call for me. And I especially appreciated all that you've shared with specific reference to mental health clients, to really see that this is not just for people that are healthy, quote unquote, labeled as healthy and wanting to have more success in their life. It is for everybody, no matter what our circumstances, no matter what our experience is in the moment. We all have that capacity to connect inside with that. So thank you for being a mentor and inspire for me along the way.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. You know, I realized I don't have my missing link right next to me, which I usually do, but I don't have to leave the set to do that. But you know, Sid talked repeatedly about that. He was very clear that every human being human being psyche is rooted in the same universal truth, and the only difference is the spiritual and psychological understanding. That's all. That's always the only difference. There's, you know, I tell clients repeatedly, I'm sorry, you don't get to be the exception. You know, bad news. Bad news and good news. You don't get to be the exception. You're not the one person that's broken. Sorry. When you were, can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you were talking about, you know, and I don't mean to steal, because I know George is going to be on here. My good friend George Pransky. I remember him saying, Sid says, so now what do you do when people come and they're in pain? And George says, well, I take them back into it and I have them tell the story, and we kind of go through that and we work through that. And he says, so people come to you in pain and then you take them in. How's that working out for you? And George had this moment of, most of the time it's not working out real well, you know. And it's humbling, you know. Yeah.
Well, and there's a real difference between the release of catharsis, which is momentary, and sustainable change. So there can be cathartic release, but sustainable change is something that is so different and can be so subtle in the experience of it, but life-changing in the effects of it.
Right.
So for today, I know that you mentored with Sydney Banks for, I believe it was 26 years or longer. So you worked with him very closely. And you also are one of the people that I hear mostly referring to his source materials in your sharings, like even just now mentioning the missing link. And so I myself would enjoy it, and I'm sure everybody watching and listening would really appreciate you just sharing what that experience has been like for you. You can start wherever you want in terms of your journey, but I just think that the story of your coming to this and seeing what you've seen will be so valuable for others.
Okay, well, I'm glad to give that a shot. I'm sure most people, know, or they wouldn't be on the website, on the webinar, but that I am a psychiatrist. I've been in psychiatry since 1974. Was when I started my psychiatry residency. So I think my addition says that's close to 45 years, or coming up on 45 years. And I had been a physician for 5 years before that. I'd been in surgery training for 2 years, and then a family practitioner, Navy flight surgeon for a squadron of Navy pilots during the Vietnam War, and I got drafted. So I had all this training, but I was suffering myself. I had been going in and out of clinical depression for 21 years when I met George Pransky, and then subsequently got a chance to hear Mr. Banks, which many of you have heard, is ironically on April Fool's Day, 1983. I'll let you take the guess who the fool was. As I sat there with my 26 and a half years of schooling and my 800 lectures on mental illness and medications to try to relieve the pain of them. Within a very short period of time of hearing Mr. Banks in a fairly large group of people in San Francisco over a weekend, within 20 or 30 minutes, I knew that my life had changed. Wasn't expecting that. I'm reminded the tears that are forming or have formed in my eyes are certainly not tears of sadness, they're tears of gratitude. And it's been a wonderful thing these last 35 years to see those tears of gratitude flow down the cheeks of clients and have them say, doctor, these are not tears of sadness. They're tears of gratitude. For the first time in my entire life, I feel that I can find peace, which is the only thing everybody's looking for. Now, they're not looking for it. I don't think they're looking for it for itself. It's like it's where all the treasures are. And people at some innate level know that. They know that all the treasures are in a place of peace. And to me, you can almost use interchangeably the words love and peace, because they're never apart. They're never apart. When people are at peace, at least I'll speak for myself, I have direct access to those feelings of love. And that changes everything. I was laughing this morning with a wonderful woman who I think Ellen Friedman, came by to pick something up that she had been helpful to Linda's recovery from her knee surgery. And I said, as I woke up this morning about 4:30, and it happens occasionally, not all the time, but when I'm going to do a webinar or a presentation at a conference, and it's not waking up out of anxiety. It's almost like I'm woken up because my talk is being written and somebody wants me to be there while it happens or something. I don't know. It's a strange thing. And one of the things that came to my mind was that to ask the question, which I've obviously kind of given the answer, is what is there in the world? What is the one item in the world that if you add it to anything, it makes it better? And there's no amount that's too much. That would be the riddle. Well, of course, the answer would be love.
Yeah.
I am at loss at what experience there would be, or what situation that would not be improved by the presence of love. And so I really used to like Stephen Wright. Some of you might know him. He's a comedian that years ago was on Johnny Carson. He had this very dry presentation. Do I see a couple of nods? Anybody know Stephen Wright? But I loved him. Do you know him, Rohini?
I don't know him.
No. Well, he would say things. I actually saw him live one time with my late wife, Sue, and I saw him. And he would say things like, my brother sent me a postcard today saying, wish you were here. It had a picture of Earth on it. I went to the store the other day and bought some used paint. It was in the shape of a house. You know, and you go, what? But the next one he'd say, and while I was there at the store, I bought some powdered water. I'm just not really sure what to add to it. Well, why am I going off on this tangent? You know, I thought of that in terms of love, like if, you know, I got some powdered love. Now, what do I add to it? You know, the only thing to add to it, I guess, is liquid love or something. I don't know, but just the idea that water, you know, and we often use the metaphor of light, you know, anyway, just those are just loose thoughts that were not in any script I was given at 4:30 this morning. The idea that one of the things that's come, well, you know, a brief thing, people can hear this, the old stuff on many of my talks, and it changed my life. I was sitting there with 26 and a half years of schooling and 800 lectures on mental illness, and not one lecture in my entire residency on mental health. And I started incrementally getting a glimpse of the principles, and you know, one step at a time, like all of us. Most of us do not get knocked off our horse, you know, and we see that it is an inside out world. We start getting a glimpse. Now, most of us, when we see it's an inside out world, we also have a pile over on one side or the other of exceptions to that. It's an inside world unless something happens to one of my children, unless something seriously happens to, unless something financially, unless we have this whole pile of exceptions that we don't think are distress or pain is created from the inside out, but by the outside in. And my experience is, over the 35 years of my exposure to the principles, is that pile has gotten incrementally lower and lower and lower. And to the point where I don't know that I know what's in that pile. I suppose it would be long excruciating pain or torture, or I don't know what it would be, but even that, there's a place that I know, whatever my exceptions are now, I know from understanding the spiritual nature of life that there really is nothing that has the power on the outside to take away my mental well-being. And to the degree that we start to really know that, I think something very powerful happens as to our level of peace, you know, because we've let go of fear. We've let go of fear. And I was touched by watching a thing recently on the last years of Martin Luther King. It's an HBO documentary called King Into the Woods. And at one point he had a tic that developed a few months before he died. And the tic would jerk his shoulders even when he was talking, Dr. King. And then it disappeared. And Andrew Young said to him, Martin, your tic has disappeared. And he said, yeah, it has. And it won't be coming back. And Andrew said, why, how do you know that? He says, because I know what it was from. He said, I had not accepted my death. I was in fear of death, and now I'm not. And he went on to say, Andrew said that we are not that Martin used to say, we're not entirely free until we have lost our love of wealth and our fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people can misinterpret that and say that he's not saying wealth is wrong. There are a lot of wonderful people who are very wealthy and use that wealth in incredible ways to help other people. Certainly, to me, the Gates Foundation seems to be in that category. But how back to the principles? I think as people experience the incremental insights into the principles, then I think that what happens is that there's just less impediment to living in the moment because you're not in fear of what might happen next. And you really start to the degree that you start to really understand when Sid says you are guided moment to moment throughout your entire life by a powerful spiritual force, which he would call universal mind. To the degree that you know that, not just intellectually, but you know it in your heart, it changes everything. Because why would I worry if I knew that I had within me everything to guide me through any uncertainty? Why would I analyze? It doesn't mean that analysis is evil, but if you have a formula and you have all the variables, analysis works really well. But if you don't, within 2 or 3 minutes of analysis, if you're not closer to your answer, you're probably not going to be there 30 years from now. I'm sure many have heard me quote Woody Allen in The Sleeper. He woke up in The Sleeper. He'd been asleep for 20 years. And his first lines are, when he woke up, he said, 20 years. Damn, I would be halfway through my analysis by now. And life has become very simple for me. So I'm going to share and share some of the things just that's fresh for me as you asked. And one is the first one is that Linda, my wife Linda, asked Sid one time, said, Sid, is love sufficient? People talk about love being the curative agent. And Sid really got very quiet. And then he said, love and understanding are sufficient. And people may have heard me say this recently. I was coming back from the Midwest from seeing children and grandchildren this summer. And I watched a movie called Thank You for Your Service. And it was 5 men that came back from Iraq and got discharged after their duty there. And they went to their wives, and they went to their fiancés, and they went to their families, and they went to their workplace. And I realized there are really 2 states. Now, I suppose there's variations of the level, but there's 2 main states. One is the state of love with understanding, and the other is the state of love without understanding. Because love is always present.
Mm-hmm.
It's always present. It's at the core of our being. And what I saw, these soldiers were coming back to the United States, and they had incredible love in their hearts. They loved each other dearly. How they'd carried each other wounded off the battlefield, regardless of whether the man weighed 35 to 40 pounds more than they did. Now, they might give him a bunch of crap after he's healed up about he should lose some weight so the next time it wouldn't be so damn hard to carry him to safety. But that, even that would be from a place of love. And they came back and they loved their wives and they loved their fiancés and they loved their children, but they didn't have understanding of what they were as spiritual beings in a form, utilizing the very thing that they're made of, the universal mind, thought, and consciousness, to create their experience moment to moment. So without that understanding, they were at the mercy of their memories, of things they had done, of things they had seen done, of things that had happened around them, of losses that they'd have. And so it wasn't the absence of love, it was the absence of understanding that put them into a hell in their head that was hard for love to penetrate in their level of understanding. So that's one thing I've seen, that it's always, their love is always there. It's just I see, Sid said that, and even in on page 7 in the missing link, but I see things deeper.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I see is that every single moment of my life is a second chance.
Mm.
What a beautiful thing. If I get off the phone, and it hasn't happened, I will say, in a number of months, but if I get off the phone and I've been I've been snippy with a telemarketer, I've forgotten that we're all connected, and I've forgotten that man or woman is trying to probably make some money to pay the bills and help their, and it's wonderful to have somebody that you love and loves you, that's willing to say gently but lovingly, Bill, you were not kind to that person. I heard you on the phone. Now, in that case, I'm going to have a hard time finding who that telemarketer is, but all I can do is pass it forward to the next one that I interact with. But there are a lot of times where I can apologize to a colleague or a friend or my spouse or my children if I have a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
Every moment I have a second chance. I can't change what's already happened. I remember a beautiful Black lady that was an employee of a friend in Florida, and I suppose this is inappropriate, but she said, why she lived in the present moment in a joyful, loving state. And she said, why is it so many white people are thinking about the past when it doesn't even exist anymore? And then she'd say, and when you're not doing that, it seems like a lot of you are worrying about things you have no control over. And can you help me understand that, Dr. Pettit? Geneva, yeah, those are good questions. And of course, as we know, it's not unique to the color of your skin or the amount of melatonin you have on your skin. Called the human condition. So every moment is a second chance. The other thing is that that to know that it's not, I think people get caught up in perfection, and and I'll just share this last well, here's the main point that I want to make is Sid, and I don't know that I even have heard this quote, and maybe it's on one of the old audio tapes, but you often hear Sid quoted, which I'm sure is true, that he said something to the effect that if people just were not frightened by their experience,
Mm-hmm.
that it changed the world. Now, that's one of those statements that it rings true, But I think there's some understanding that allows that to be truly understandable. If we understand that we're creating our experience from the inside out, and that we have universal mind if available every moment, then we wouldn't be frightened by our experience. We would be more ready to listen rather than to judge it. Recently, I have come back from twice from the Midwest, and I one time had an 18-day cold, and the second time I had a 24-day cold. That's this summer. So if I lose audiences from that, that's okay, because I'm human, and I think it's important that we realize our humanity. And when I say a cold for 18 days and the second time for 24, I mean that I was able to only do what I had to do. I did not do my light weights twice a week. I did not do my bike ride for 20 minutes 3 times a week. I did whatever I had to do to do life. Okay. And then recently I got a severe earache that I'm on the 8th or 9th day of drops in my left ear canal. And each one of those was accompanied by sensations that were not very pleasant. But it was important for me to know, to just be present with the experience. And I really believe that there's always something for me to see from every experience I have, that I'm being pointed in a direction. There's more to know about that. There's more to know about that. Now, that's different from probably get in trouble with some nuns than when I got whacked in grade school and a few times in high school with a ruler by a nun. You know, it doesn't have, it's not like I'm feeling whacked. It's that I'm given knowledge that it's not that I'm stupid. It's not that I should have learned this earlier. It's just a gentle message of, there's even more to know about that. There's even more to know about that. And to the degree that we can have the humility to have that be okay, that we're just on a journey, and that if we get lost in mentally or physically in something, I think it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to see something that we haven't seen before. Now, I'm just saying, for me, that's what really works. That even if I start having emotional pain, there's a place that I know that where it's coming from. If I really know that the only person that can create emotional pain for me is in the same underbritches as me, and the last time I looked, there's only room for one, then if I really know that, then I don't start looking externally for the culprit. I listen. I get, and many of you have heard me say that people. One of my clients years ago brought from their spiritual or religious calendar, they brought a statement that said that man, meaning men and women, are the only of God's creatures that goes faster when it's lost. It's powerful. Because our tendency is to go faster, both mentally and physically, and then wonder why we're tripping over ourselves and making mistakes, and oftentimes making things worse than they were before. And whereas if you watch an animal, if an animal is not being chased and they get lost, they stop. They stop cold. I watched a chipmunk on our front porch one Saturday morning in Michigan, and he sat there for 12 to 15 minutes. And then he smelled and listened. He did not move. And then he saw where to go, and he went. Well, I think that's a valuable lesson. The other thing is, I think it's important to have the humility to know that you don't know. I guess it's the same thing, but I had so many people that have asked to visit for a while, and they say, well, I really know these principles. I've been around them for 5, 7 years, but I keep getting really depressed and anxious, and every time something happens, I get really reactive, and it takes me weeks to come out of it. And very gently, I try to say, the first step to knowing more is to admit that there's things you don't know. Me too. Me too. Hell, I'm right now. Now I've had an insight, and we'll see how it unwinds. But I'm probably 60 pounds heavier than I was when I was in the service, and I know, I'm a physician. I know that puts a load on my heart. I know that puts a load on my pancreas, and certainly have I had thoughts through the years of what the hell, what are you doing teaching the principles and you're 60 pounds overweight, But I will also say that would I trade to be back at 185 to 187 and live in the state of mind that I lived in then, and to have the quality of my relationships with my spouse and my children and my colleagues what it was then? Absolutely not. Not even for a moment. So is that a reminder that there's a gentle reminder that there's more to learn? I said recently to somebody, I said, we are in school until our last breath. And it doesn't matter if you want to hold your breath and say, I don't want to be in school, because you don't have a choice. It's just the way it is. We're in school. Now, the exciting thing about that is we have another way of saying that is that we have an opportunity to learn more and to see more until our last breath. There's a wonderful quote, and again, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a wonderful quote, I think, of Einstein, because Einstein was such a brilliant scientist, but so much more. There's a wonderful quote at the beginning of the chapter on relationships in a book that some of you have heard me mention by Arnold Beiser, who was a physician in 1950 that finished his residency, describes himself as a California beach bum Jew, and he eventually married a Detroit Italian Catholic, and at the time of his writing of his book, they had been married 35 years. But as he finished his internship, he was getting ready. He was driving on his way to his assignment because he'd gotten enrolled. What do I want to say? The armed services called him to duty for the Korean War, and as he was driving along, he wasn't feeling well, and he woke up in the morning paralyzed from the neck down, quadriplegic from polio, 6 months before the polio vaccine was discovered. It's a powerful book. It's called Flying Without Wings. And this was in 1950s. But he has a quote in his 4th chapter on relationships surprisingly from Einstein. I mean, it surprised me when I saw who the quote was from, who talked about that we human beings live in an optical delusion of our own thinking, and it separates us from other people. And we open it up enough to include a few people of similar thoughts and ideas around us. And so we have this little narrow circle of people. And he said the challenge is to open that circle, to realize that's a delusion that we're creating, and to open that circle to all of mankind and all living creatures. And it's a powerful, powerful quote. And the other thing about Einstein, when I talked about we're in school, if you've read Walter Isaacson's biography of him, and I actually listened to it on the audio book, I think, that he was leaking from his aortic aneurysm, and they gave him the option, this is in the early 50s, that they could do surgery and maybe have a 50% chance of doing better and surviving the surgery. And they were just starting aortic aneurysm grafts, and they was leaking, and Einstein said, no, I've lived a full life, and I'm okay I'm okay with whatever the course is. So they came in the next morning or whatever morning, a couple mornings later, and he had passed during the night. And there were 11 pages of formulas
Hmm.
that he had worked on until his final breath. And I thought, wow, there's a man that wasn't afraid to still be learning
Mm-hmm.
and until his final breath. Thoughts about love. One of the things I've learned from both of the beautiful women that I've been married to, my late wife Sue and my present wife Linda, is it has helped me become a better listener. And I still don't claim to be very good at it. You'd think somebody who's a psychiatrist is supposed to be a good listener, but maybe that's why I went into psychiatry, because I knew I wasn't. But I think frequently love often takes form of listening, of just being there. When I have adult children and they remain your children, whether they're 40 or 10 or 8 or 5, and they're in pain, and I don't have the solution, but I can listen. I can listen for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, if I can, make time at another time, and just listen and be there. And oftentimes at the end of that, maybe something will come to mind. And then it's that old story, people do not care what you know until they know that you care.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've really truly listened, and it's not a technique, it's the way the world works. Then if something has come to mind, and in the quiet state of listening, I think often Universal Mind does give us a couple of 3x5 cards that might be helpful to the other person, that we share not as advice, but just as thoughts that have come to me, if they're helpful to you. We haven't talked about, and people know there's a set of 13 hours that I've done with the Real Change portal on the different diagnoses. But all I'll say is that if people would see that any label that people have been given is an attempt to describe where that person is, it is not who they are, never. Because who everyone is divine energy in a disguise. Now, I'm aware of the time, and so I'm going to go back to maybe what I should have done at the beginning, but maybe that's perfect. Who knows? Go back to my sense of the principles. And
Mm-hmm.
when I listened to Sid years and years ago, he would talk about the great nothingness, the great isness, and the great allness. And the great nothingness, it's interesting, when I was in Africa a year ago, March, I was given a book by people that there, and it's called African Wisdom, and it has a quote for every day in the year. It has beautiful pictures from the people and the scenes from the 55 countries in Africa. And the first one is about the great nothingness, that there is a great nothingness from which everything comes. And it gives form to everything. And that's universal mind. And that's what Sid said there. And he would say that there's pure love and understanding. That great nothingness, he says, is really pure love and understanding. That's what God is. An energy, a formless energy of pure love and understanding. And so then, when I was a child growing up Catholic, they used to tell me that God was everywhere. That was very puzzling, very puzzling. In my pen, in my glasses, in this paper, it felt a little weird. Now it has no feeling of weirdness, and I know that's true, because that formless energy, and the physicists have finally admitted. And Linda showed me something a few years ago. There was a group that met twice for some period of time, 40 some over in Europe. And they finally agreed that there was a state of formlessness. There was no matter. It wasn't. It was a little teeny bit of matter that's been compressed so much that the universe came from it. My bullshit meters always used to go, that's nonsense. Anyway, but there was a great nothingness. There was a formless energy that when universal thought or divine thought created this isness, this isness, all this form that we see, it has to, there's only one substance that it could be made of. Whatever you call, whatever label you call that energy that was there before the Big Bang, if you call it God, then God is everywhere. If you call it curly, curly is everywhere. If you call it Mo, Mo is everywhere. It doesn't matter what label you give it. Everything has to be made of the energy, that the formless energy, and the wonderful thing many people have heard me say is that there are actually two scientists that won the Nobel Prize in different parts of the world 2 years ago showed that creation is accelerating. It's going faster and faster. Now, it blows your mind because your intellect goes, where is it going to? You know, okay, but it's accelerating. So you've got this nothingness and this isness, and as it says, the allness is the two together. If you don't see that, if you don't know the oneness of life, then you get lost in a cosmic lie. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that we're all always a little K in knowing and a little K S in seeing, and then we jump to a capital S. You know, I don't think we go from a font of 8 to a font of 40. To me, it's been maybe one font at a time, and I don't know that I'm past. If I started at 8, I don't know that I'm past a 12. But I see more and I know more in my heart than I did 35 years ago. And it has incredible, you know, I don't know a lot about homeopathy, but I know the theory is sometimes it just takes a few drops. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true of wisdom and love. So I'm going to stop with that.
Oh, that was really beautiful, Bill. Thank you. And it's such a great example of how this understanding impacts people. You know, listening to you wakes up that knowing inside of everyone listening. Just as when you were listening to Sid, like that's how this understanding is shared. And it's pointing people to what's already alive inside of them. And that's why there's no techniques and strategies needed. Absolutely. It's really being in this conversation. And so, well, thank you. And we have some time now so that we can take some questions. And the way that I'll do that is if you click on the participants button, it will open up so that you can click a raise your hand on the right-hand side of the screen. And so if you have a question that you'd like to ask, click on that raised hand button and I'll be able to see it. And then I will unmute you so that you can ask your question. And so we'll just give people a moment or two to figure that out. And if you have any questions, just unmute yourself if you can't find that button. Oh, here we go. Patrick has a question. Patrick.
Willie, I have to say hi.
Hi, Patrick. Oh, my brother. This is my brother, Pat. My little brother, who's 4 inches taller, 4.5 inches taller than I am.
Baby brother.
Baby brother.
I love to listen to you and feel blessed that you're my brother.
Yeah, it's Mitchell. It's Mitchell. He always has a great hat on. Got a whole collection of those.
Oh.
Thanks so much for being with us, Pat. Great to have you.
You know, the one thing I'd like to say, Rohini, and I can say it very shortly, is that, again, I have so many people that contact me and they say, I really need help. And, but of course, oftentimes I can't afford, you know, to hire you, et cetera. But they have not, the first thing I do is to say, we'll find a way, and you might even find some other people to get together to contact me. But have you, and they haven't read Sid's books. Mm-hmm. They haven't watched Sid's videos. And I've been quoted of saying, listen, even the people that are willing to pay money to talk to me, if you haven't read Sid's if you haven't listened to Sid's videos, listen to the set of videos, the 3 sets that are on www.sidbanks.com.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to them twice through, each one of them. It won't take you that long. And then read all 6 of his little books twice. And then if you still have questions, you'll get your money's worth in the time you spend with me, because you'll be able to hear and look in the direction that I point. Much more likely, not that it's not there already, but you will have awakened it, or maybe gotten some of the shrubbery out of the way or whatever, that will allow you to hear at a different level. And so I just wanted to reiterate the power of Sid's. You know, people say, well, I've listened to all your, and I've listened to X, Y, and Z. And I say, you know, I don't know about the other people, but I'll tell you, listening to Sid's videos are multiple times more deep and more powerful than mine. And so please, for yourself, not for me, go to the source. If you're trying to learn relativity, you go to Einstein's 3 original papers in 1905. You don't go to the 2nd and 3rd generation people.
Yeah,
First.
go direct to
Doesn't
the
mean that
primary source.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I'll do is I'll include the links to the videos that are free. You can stream them online, and also the books in the write-up for this, so people can have access to that if they have trouble finding it. So Tracy has a question. Let me unmute you, Tracy. Hi, Tracy, you there?
Hi there. Am I there?
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, how are you?
I can see you down to your nose.
I'm sorry.
There you go. Now I see you. That's wonderful. Now
I didn't really think about I was going to be on screen this morning, so I have no makeup on, but I'm so happy to see you guys.
You look wonderful. You look wonderful.
Listen, I just
See,
wanted
love
to.
is even the best makeup.
Yeah, well, hey,
Yeah,
you know, I'm
go.
fine. I am who I am.
There you go.
I just wanted to do a follow-up with you.
Sure.
You were really helpful to me and my son and my son's family a few years ago. And the party that you that I first called you about, one of the children had some really difficult challenges, but you brought them into your area, and then you did a family counseling with them also.
Oh gosh, Tracy.
And
oh, gosh,
yeah, you remember those? You remember that? Yeah.
Oh my heart.
And,
yes. What a beautiful,
yes,
what a beautiful bunch of little. Oh my gosh.
It
yes.
was amazing. Exactly. So,
Wow.
so what I want you to know, what I want you to know was that we are still working with and dealing with the son I called you about.
Right.
But the grandson. But
Right.
the other members of the family, the ones you brought in for family help, who were just babies, some of them at the time,
Right.
I want you to know the impact that the family work had on them. One is now 11 and one is now 19. And the 11-year-old is so steeped in principle now. It's just amazing just to talk to him. And the 19-year-old and I have these great conversations. So I want you to understand that when you work with them, and they work with you all summer long, the impact that the principals have over years on the youngest of the people who are in that room, who you think, you know, I mean, this kid was like, the 11-year-old was maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that at the time. And I just want you to know that, you know, and how much I appreciate the impact that you've had on that family.
Well, that is really wonderful. And, you know, do you have my email?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, it's WF Pettit Jr. at gmail.com.
Yes, I have it. Sure.
From you. And I would certainly make sure that it was, I think I would make sure that it was, you know, anonymous, but to share, to be able to share that in some form in my book, you know, to your testimony, you know, that would awaken hope for families, I think. And
yes, I mean, there was so much. I'm sorry, there was just so much turmoil in that whole family as a result of what was going on with the one child. Wow. And you say just when I say you save them, I know you understand what I meant. I mean, the principal saves them. Yeah.
Their insights. Yeah. But yeah. And if I can be of further assistance, please let me know. But that's a wonderful to hear that, you know, you often don't hear, you don't know, you make your injection. It's like, you know, you make your injection, you give your, you know, and Sid used to say, people get this wrong, but I mean, they misinterpret it, that it's not good to be invested in what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had many clients tell me the day that you let go of being invested, of me giving better, it allowed me to get better. Because I wasn't trying to either please you or do what I did with other authoritarian figures when they tried to help me, is put it where the sun don't shine. So the
Yes.
lack of investment. And so I think I've learned that you just give your heart and your soul, and you get present and make sure you're rested when you do it. And then whatever's going to happen, you trust that, you trust that wisdom, the universal mind. And that, what a beautiful thing to get feedback, though. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Please give them my love and big hugs.
Oh,
Thank
they still remember you. I most certainly will. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So we have Pam Pappas. I'll unmute you now. It's the next person with their hand raised.
Pam is a wonderful psychiatrist.
Pam.
Hi there.
Should I not rat it on you, Pam?
Well, no, it's all right. I'm uncovered. I'm not wearing makeup either, so
She's so much more than a psychiatrist. But anyway,
Oh,
go
God.
ahead.
Now, I love you and how you articulate these things, and I'm resonating with you also on how unexpectedly tears come in some of these insights, which I'm having some now. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, there was a quote, or either it came out of you, that really struck me this morning. And it was the one about without understanding that you and I don't have all the words because it went kaboom. Without understanding that you create your own reality,
Right.
you would be at the mercy of your memories.
Right.
Was that something that Sid said, or was that you?
It's mine now.
Yeah.
If you see if you see the principles, I mean, he's very clear that the past doesn't exist. I mean, you don't have to have Sid to say that. 5 minutes ago doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist except as a memory trace. That's all. It does not exist. And when people actually, I can't tell you how many people that have been labeled and experienced symptoms that met the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, that when they saw as their understanding of the principles deepened, there was nothing that their brain could spit out that could take them away from a place of peace. Even flashbacks, Technicolor flashbacks, they would allow their mind to quiet, let them go through, and many of them would say, every time that happens, that I go through and not being frightened by them, in Star Trek terms, it loses some of its force field. Until the day that happens that the memory gets triggered and there is no force field. And that's the day that there's no more avoidance. They don't have to avoid watching certain shows on Lifetime, or they don't have to not read certain books. They don't have to not go to certain movies, because they are free. They are free from the impact of their memories. So, and it's been a beautiful, 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 beautiful experience to see that over and over and over again. So it's not a should, it's not a have to, but if people don't know that that's possible, and not only possible, but probable, they're going to be looking in the wrong direction, to me. Does that answer your question? Or,
yeah, but it's like it's so overwhelming in possibility and beautiful. And in my response inwardly, I'm thinking, okay, so how do you help them get there? Or how do I get there personally, so that that pile that you're referring to, that where this does not apply, gets smaller and smaller. I need to shrink my pile.
Yeah. First thing I would do is to tell you or whoever is interested, read all of Sid's books twice.
I've done it.
Watch all the videos twice, and then if you have questions, find somebody that you think might be able to point you in the direction of the answer. I'm not the only one. I think I'm a person that might be able to, but yeah, because as Rohini has pointed out, this is not like learning calculus or learning a whatever, because we already know it. We used to call this flathead therapy, Pam, because people, when they have the big insight, they go, oh shit, I knew this.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful, or you can, start affecting your hairline, So yeah, so it's just, but it is about gratitude for what we see, rather than judging that we should see more at this point in our life. Gratitude, Sid said repeatedly, and he says it in the last chapter on wisdom. People say, how do I find this wisdom? It's right there in the missing link. He said, that's why I read that book with people, psychiatrists, psychologists, anybody, one page at a time. And sometimes it takes up to 12 to 14 sessions. Sometimes it takes 6 or 8. Because it is so rich and powerful, and people have read it and then they go, God, I never read this line before. Hell, I've read that book 100 times and I still have that experience. I go, shit, I just saw this line at a much deeper level. And he says, how do you, people say in the chapter on wisdom, how do I find this wisdom? And he says, seek a grateful feeling for what you already have. Because contentment and satisfaction for what you already have releases the prison doors of your mind and opens you up to more wisdom and insight. It's right there. Maybe take a peek at the last chapter on wisdom and see. So
thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. You're fine.
I got the flat head.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. It's an exciting journey. I know. Thank you. It's an exciting journey. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it.
So after 35 years, I'm just finishing up 2nd grade. Who gives a shit? That kindergarten and that 1.5 years has made my life more gentle and more loving than I ever dreamed. So let me be grateful. Maybe I'll make it to 3rd grade. Who knows?
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
All right, the next person with their hand raised is Michael Rosengren. Michael, I've unmuted you. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Where are you, Michael?
I'm here someplace.
I know I'm having trouble finding you.
No, but I mean, where are you, in what country and what place? Or?
Oh, I'm here in Bakersfield, California.
Ah, okay. I know Bakersfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see me up there, but I can't see you. I don't know what I did. I'm a technology genius here, but Bill, I have grown to love you and become a big fan. I have been a psychotherapist, a family and marriage therapist for over 25 years, and worked for Kern County Mental Health. And the first time that I ran into you, and it literally was running into you, was at that meeting with Sid in San Jose. I think it was supposed to be his last appearance that he was making, a public appearance as far as sharing. And that blew me away. And I kind of evolved since then, but the group I was working with was
the only
using...
thing I'm going to say, Michael, is that I know that there may be other people that have questions. And so maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I want to make room for the other people too, if you can go to the question.
Let's go to the question.
Okay.
The question is, because I brought it up there, about the use of medications.
Uh-huh.
And I just wanted to know your thoughts on the role of medications with the three principles, if there is a role.
Mm-hmm.
We seem to have a big shift in the mental health deal from mental health to behavioral health.
Okay.
So I'm just curious about the place that medication sometimes might play.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will tell you, I still prescribe medications. I do a clinic, a telepsychiatry clinic to Michigan, where I used to work in a federally qualified clinic there for people in need. And I work Wednesdays and Friday mornings. Now, the clinic at 9:30 in the morning there is 6:30 my time. So on Wednesday and Thursday, Wednesday and Friday, I'm up at 5:20, getting ready for my clinic. But here's my thought of medications, and I will tell you, if indeed it's true that all the research shows that when they hook people up to PET scanners and fMRIs, have you listened to any of my podcasts for the 13 1-hour podcasts done for the United Kingdom Real Change Portal?
I've heard some of them.
Okay, well, what I've basically said there is outlined that when people get caught up in negative thinking, what happens is the biochemical dysregulation that they create is actually, they activate the stress response, which is meant for life-threatening emergencies. And that's what it's meant for, but that's what is activated, and it's meant to be activated once every 24 to 72 hours for life-threatening situations for up to 30 minutes, which gives you a chance to escape the situation or stun the saber-toothed tiger with your big wooden club and get away. And it's meant for that, but it's not meant for us to worry about our mom's breast cancer or a dad's alcoholism or a grandson's cocaine habit or whether there's going to be a layoff at the factory, et cetera. It's the infinite number of ways that we can take ourselves away from that place of mental well-being. Now, when that system is on for more than 30 minutes, it starts creating biochemical dysregulation that requires all kinds of compensatory mechanisms to be activated. Even gene, only 20% of our genes are on at any time. And so you actually has to go from the optimum genes to backup genes to deal with these problems that are being created. I saw that when I was really with my bad cold and with my earache. I saw that every moment of my experience, I had a choice of either being in acceptance of my experience or in resistance to my experience. And to the degree I would go into resistance to my experience, universal mind and my body now not only had to deal with trying to heal me, it had to deal with the disturbance I was creating with my resistance. And people don't know that. And so they try to do things. I used to run 50 miles a week. That was better than 15 martinis every night. I have people that come to me that are doing an hour twice a day of yoga, 30 minutes twice a day of mindfulness meditation, and qigong, 5 times a week. And now there's nothing wrong with any of those. They're beautiful. But if they're being used after the fact to try to release the dis-ease and the biochemical dysregulation that they're innocently causing, it's after the fact. There's a difference between stress management and there's a difference between resilience, which is important to have, and stress resistance, to where you don't take on stress or you take on a fraction of it. Now, if you're doing that innocently and your coping mechanisms, which are, I won't even go into detail, I'll try to be concise here. then if somebody's having 4 panic attacks a day that are lasting an hour a day, I'm probably going to give them some medication to stop the panic attacks. I'm going to explain what a panic attack is, that it's an alarm system. It's your friend. It's like the rumble strip on the side of the road that's letting you, trying to get you to not run into the ditch and flip over and die. And I'll explain it. But if I need to have, and I will say, I'm not going to give you these for the rest of your life, because if you're willing to learn something so that you can be empowered, but it's hard to do that when you're hearing voices that you don't understand. Now, all voices are, even hallucinations, are thoughts with special effects. That's all they are. That's all they are. There is nothing that we experience that isn't a thought. I always kid that I one time saw something on the screen of my mind that wasn't a thought. I didn't think it was, but it was just a thought in disguise. That's the only thing we experience from birth to death, is one thought at a time. Now, if I need to, I actually trained at Duke, and I know there's people in the Three Principles community that are horrified for me to share this. And I frankly can't care. All I can do is speak Bill Pettit's truth. I don't claim to speak the truth of the world. The only thing that I can speak to is Bill Pettit's truth. So I wouldn't want anybody to say this is the way it is because Bill Pettit said it. No, it's Bill Pettit at his present level of understanding. That's all it is. But I went to Duke and I trained in electroconvulsive therapy. And for 8 years at Aberdeen, South Dakota, I did electroconvulsive therapy when I had to. Now, when people would be referred to me, I would often say, for ECT, I'd say, would you be willing to come to groups 3 times and meet with me at least once or twice? And can you guarantee, can you give me assurance that you'll be alive? You know, and after they read The Missing Link or Second Chance, hope would get awakened. And the vast majority of those did not go to ECT. But many of them were in such a state, or they were delusional to where they thought something was eating them up from the inside. I had no problems doing ECT because it would clear the slate. And oftentimes then what I had talked to them about earlier, they went, wow, now I see what you were talking about. Because their grip on their thinking had been loosened by the electroconvulsive therapy. Now, is that dramatic? Yeah, it's dramatic. But sometimes life, you have to do dramatic things. If your child's running into the street, you knock them down. You don't normally knock your kid down and maybe cause them to even break a wrist or an ankle. But if it's saving their life, then you knock them down. So medications to me are an attempt to try to re-regulate. And I can give you all, there's article upon that the research is pointing to the very thing I'm saying, but they don't have the understanding to understand the research. So do I use medication? Absolutely. Now, do I tell them that I've never seen anybody get peace of mind from a pill? And if you're interested in finding out, you know, then we'll work and there are certain medications that I make clear that I'm not going to be giving you Klonopin for more than maximum maybe 3 months. At least we'll revisit it, see, or Xanax, or I probably wouldn't even give that at all. I'd put it to something else. But so there's medications, but I use medications as a physician. But my game and my goal is never. I've seen so many people get caught up in their ego to where their goal is to get off all their medications. And I make it very clear to them, that is not my goal. My goal for you is to find the deepest level of peace, joy, and love possible. And that other stuff will be taken care of. Now, many of those people go down to, and many people get off. Some people go down from 300 a day to 20 a day of something. Well, I'm sorry, that's 14/15. That's about what, 94% or something. I'll take that any day of the week. So that, does that help at all, or?
It really does. Okay. It really helps.
I mean, I think the ones that I did, those podcasts, I think I really go into it, obviously, in much more detail.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Michael. Thank you, Bill. We have one last person. Are you okay taking
Sure.
one more
Oh,
question, Bill?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. All right, then. So the last question we'll take is with Andrea. Let me just unmute you, Andrea. Oh, there we go. Andrea, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Rohini. Hi,
Andrea.
Bill. It's
Hi.
lovely to speak to you.
So are you in Sweden? Where are
I'm
you?
in Scotland.
Scotland. Oh,
Yeah.
we're watching, my wife and I are watching The Outlander.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my
It's
gosh.
good.
And she started reading the 8 books now. But
Yeah, I've read most of the books. It's
yeah,
good.
okay.
I've been to Culloden and had a look around and everything. So
Oh gosh. We
yeah.
had wonderful times there, in Scotland a year ago, and it was so fun to see the beautiful country. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't come across the Principal's End, so I would have loved to have been
Okay.
able to see you guys when you were over. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking when you were speaking about your list of exceptions,
Right.
did that lower because you got more insight or more understanding, or was it because you went through some of these experiences and realized that you dealt with them in a different way than you expected to?
Well, it's a good question. It's a good question. I will tell you, I believe the first is the first thing that happens is that as your understanding deepens, the pile gets less, but you may not even be aware that the pile is less until you experience it, right? So
Yeah.
when my wife, struggled, and my late wife Sue, who was just an extraordinary lady, struggled with cancer for 28 months in and out, and then went into her final 11 months where progressed until she died. I was so incredibly grateful that I knew what I knew, because it allowed me to be present with her rather than in my pain and my thing in the vast majority of the time. And it allowed me to be with my children who were grieving and losing their mother at age 14 and 15, the 2 youngest girls, right as they're coming into womanhood and really relationships and stuff. So I think after the fact, I was just grateful, and I'm hesitate to say this, but I'm going to. Even after her passing, there was a time, and I won't say even the length of time, because people get into there's no shoulds in the principles are not about shoulds. And I hear people say things like, I should know more. I should be able to go through this easier. My father died and or my spouse died, or my child got killed and I can't. It's no shoulds, but there is an understanding that allows you to go through things where you don't have to process them. You allow the healing to occur, because we have the most powerful spiritual energy of healing within us that will heal us from anything. Anything. Doctors, let's take just concrete thing. Doctors do not heal a broken bone. They put it in a cast and they say, don't walk on it. Or if it's an upper extremity, don't carry anything with it. And 6 weeks later, the damn thing is healed, even in an old guy like me. There's something powerful occurring. So to me, like when I went through her illness and her death, there was something that allowed me to come through that with more grace, I know, than I ever would have had without the understanding. And it allowed me to return and spend more of the time in the only thing that exists, which is the present moment. It's the only thing that exists. Nothing else exists. My late wife, Sue, used to say, I've realized that from moment to moment, I'm either one of 2 places. I'm either in my life or I'm in my thoughts. And one is remarkable. and the other is so often very stressful. It's not about stopping our thinking. It's not about distracting our thinking. It's not about thinking positive thoughts as much as we can. It's about leaving our damn thinking alone when we're feeling a feeling that's not peaceful and joyful. And just getting present and realizing that we are connected. We are that very energy that was there before the creation of form. Some people say that you're trying, as a metaphor, it means you're a drop. Saying you're a drop in the ocean does not mean that you're the ocean. However, I think Rumi, the poet Rumi, the Persian poet Rumi said, you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in a drop. Now, I don't care, but it's all pointing to the same place, that we're not separate from that which we seek. As Sid said repeatedly, you are what you seek. And once you start to see that with the font that goes from an 8 to an 8.5 to a 9 to a 9.5 to a 10, at some point, once you see that, you're much less likely to create pain for yourself with this beautiful gift of thought. Is that helpful at all? Or?
Yeah, that was. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your question. And thank you, Bill, for sharing with us today. And thank you, everybody, for participating in the webinar. It's just so wonderful to have such a diverse turnout from all over the world, and really grateful for everybody's participation. And I'll just finish up by letting people know that this recording, if you want to watch it again, it is going to be available on the Facebook group, the Soul Centered Series community, and it will also be available on my website. And I'll include Dr. Pettit's information so that you have access to the resources that he mentioned, if you want to look at those as well. And if anybody has questions about the live program, the 6-month program that starts in October in Santa Monica, then just reach out to me and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about it. Any last words you'd like to say, Bill?
Well, you know, I think I didn't say anything that's going to have to be edited, I don't think, right? That's a positive for
no
me.
No blooper, like bleeps going through?
Yeah. Rabbi Shaul Rosenblatt from London would be grateful that I didn't use any pornography metaphors. He said that was good. So, yeah, so I think, you know, I think we did well.
Thank you. It was wonderful.